Thank you, Ashley. And good morning, Austin. Hope you guys are enjoying the Selenium conference so far. And I hope this day is also going to be very informative for all of you. I've been personally learning so much, and I'm sure you guys are learning as well. So, to introduce myself, I'm Christina Thalayasingam, Senior Software QA Engineer from Zaizi. So, yes, I've come from London to be present here and to talk to you guys and also be part of this conference. I've been in the test automation field for the past 3 years. I've been working mainly with Selenium and JMeter in continuous integration, continuous delivery, and so on. I've been working with main clients as the Ministry of Justice UK. We work mainly with UK government clients. So the current project I'm working is with the Ministry of Justice UK, and I previously worked with the Department of Education and the Department for Business, Energy and Innovative Strategy UK. So enough about myself. You can find me on Twitter as well, and I have a question for you guys. So can you guys relate to this? Have you been in this situation where you're like, oh dear, nobody is worried about performance testing. In the kickoff meetings, in the project kickoff meetings, nobody is bothered about performance testing or load testing. Excuse me, talk about it, excuse me, no. Fine, and then do you have this coming up, oh, performance effects everywhere. And then you hear about this, oh dear, response time is too high. Everyone's like harping about it, it's the talk of the town. Oh, I've been in this. And so, today we're going to talk about how to leverage your load tests using Selenium Grid with JMeter, both hand in hand, to make your load tests look even prettier, more stronger, and it helps you to diagnose more issues. First of all, I would like to know how many of you have used JMeter before? Oh, that's quite a lot of you. How many of you have used JMeter with Selenium? Oh, okay. How many of you have used JMeter with Selenium Grid? Don't worry, so today we're going to talk about how to use Selenium Grid with JMeter. So, first of all, I'm going to talk to you guys about why we need load testing, part of our testing cycle or software life cycle. And I'm sure most of you know what load testing is and why it is important. But for those who've not done load testing, I'm just going to give you a sense of why we should do load testing. Then I'll be talking to you about JMeter and Selenium Grid together, and which will comprise of a demonstration as well. Then I'll be talking to you about JMeter with Jenkins. And then we'll move into the JMeter reports, the APDEX reports, which will give you more informative details about your tests. Okay, so why do we need to do load testing? First of all, I think we all need to know our system personally, so that we can confidently go and talk to someone about the system. I mean, we are all selling end of the day, and we're talking to our clients how the system is, how it works, so on and so forth. So we need to know the system inside out. And for that, load testing will help us to understand how the system is working. Know which particular areas have the bottlenecks, where it is squeezing in and squeezing out. Those can be identified if you do load testing. And moreover, this question was asked to me by my project manager once. How many concurrent users can our system handle? I didn't have a clue then. And load testing definitely helps you to have a solid answer. You can actually give a proper range and tell them probably between this user to this user, because you've done the load testing and you know how the system handles, how many users the system handles, and the amount of parallel users and so on. And moreover, if you have load testing, a small piece of it, as testers, developers, people who who build software, we know how the system is going to work, which parts can have difficulty with load. And those places we can actually concentrate on the load and do the testing on those parts. So if we have this part of our continuous integration or continuous delivery, then we can diagnose issues easily. As always said, prevention is better than cure. So we can have the issue found in an early stage when we have a small part of the load test done every time we do a sprint release or so on, so that we don't have to suffer at the end or worry about load test at the end, like having to take the giant step, but having baby steps and getting there to have a good system. So now we'll get to the main thing. We're going to talk about JMeter working with Selenium Grid. So JMeter has always worked with Selenium, so you can open real browser testing. So the browser will open the same way how we usually run Selenium tests. But JMeter will enable you to use multiple browsers or concurrent users. So you can use Selenium Grid to make it more realistic, because you're not going to have one particular machine having 100 browsers open or 100 concurrent users using it, because it's just not realistic, because 100 users aren't going to use a particular system from one machine. So you can use the help of Selenium Grid and have multiple node machines, and you can split the amount of users. You can use different browsers, because realistically not everyone's going to stick with Firefox, or not everyone's going to stick with Chrome. So you can have a more realistic scenario. And obviously, if you know how to, configure your node and hub and so on, you can have this part of your project pipeline. So you would need the Selenium plugin for JMeter. For those who've used JMeter, I'm sure you would have added other plugins. In the same way, you will have to add the Selenium plugin, which will enable you to have the remote WebDriver for your JMeter. So I'm going to now quickly move into the demonstration. So for those who've not used JMeter, this is how JMeter looks like. And this is the latest version, JMeter 3. Okay, so first of all, in the test plan, I'm adding a thread group. Within that thread group, I will be adding a simple controller just to make it look pretty, or for it to look more organized. Within the simple controller, I'm going to add the config element, which is my remote driver config. This is basically going to work with my Selenium Grid. So this can be added by using the plugin manager. I've already got the Selenium WebDriver support plugin enabled, but you can find it in available plugins and also do upgrades using the plugin manager. Once that is done, I'm going to add the WebDriver sampler. So this is where I'm going to write my Selenium code. So by default, there is already a Selenium code that is written. So this is basically the code that is just to go to the JMeter plugins page. But there's a lot of documentation out there. There's a lot of blogs written on how you can write. For those who've not written Selenium scripts on JMeter, you can actually use that and write more scripts. It's almost everything is possible now with the WebDriver sampler. Everything that you can do with Selenium can be written on the WebDriver sampler in JMeter. So yeah, that's the scripts. And now I am going to add the listeners. So the listeners are going to show me how the system works, or how whether the particular user was able to access the system or not. Once that is done, everyone needs an assertion. Whether we need to know if that particular page was had actually gone to the correct page. So for that, I'm just putting something very simple. I am adding the JMeter plugin. So I'm going to see if I go into that HTML page whether I can see that particular tag. So once that is done, I am now going to save it. And I'm going to change the number of users. So I'm going to have about 5 concurrent users. I'm going to give a ramp up time of 2 to 5 seconds, so 5 seconds. And I am now going to save it. And now you can see that I have, this is the node machine literally. I have accessed it remotely for you guys to see how the functionality works. I've already done the grid node, the hub node configuration, everything. And that's the particular IP address and the port for the node that I'm going to run my tests on. So now you can see initially I said the remote WebDriver config. This is just going to take the IP address and the port. And I'm going to just say WebDriver hub. I'm going to just give the knowledge to that. And the capability would be which browser I would like to run the tests on. I'm going to select Chrome. So I've already done the node configuration for Chrome. And now I am going to save it, and let's just run it. So yeah, this is the node machine that I've remotely accessed. As you can see, 5 browsers of the Chrome browsers I've opened, and everything's done. And you can go to the listeners or where you have the results and see, and as you can see, this is the assertion that I put. If it sees this, then it passes, otherwise it waits and holds till it sees that or fails. So now I'm just going to increase the number of users for you guys to see that, yeah, you can have 10 browsers open. So you can split this also into multiple machines if you want to handle 100 users or 1,000 users. And that's why Selenium Grid came in handy with this load testing. As you can see, again, 10 browsers have opened, and with ramp-up time of 5 seconds. You can definitely reduce this ramp-up time as well, but it's left to you. So now we've actually had a look at how the Selenium Grid works with JMeter. So obviously, we always do load testing, performance testing, using maybe HTTP requests and REST calls, SOAP calls, and so on. But sometimes there are situations where we can't predict when it comes to load, because sometimes the UI isn't loading, but the API is working completely fine. And for that, we can actually use Selenium with JMeter to enable us to identify these kind of glitches or the UI issues. Sometimes the UI is working fine and you put a new button or a new gallery or something like that, and then again everything goes poof and you can't, it's just not opening. So for that you can actually use Selenium, and to perform more strong or really kill your system, you can use Selenium Grid by having multiple browsers opening and testing your system. So since we've had a look at that, now let's see how we can enable this in our continuous integration. So as I told you before, it's very important to have at least a little bit of load testing part of your continuous integration, because it's better to take baby steps rather than sitting there and worrying about the whole load test right at the end. So having a small part of where you know there could be issues. We know the system, we can predict this particular page or this particular situation can be an issue, and we can have those parts tested or load tested in our continuous integration. And that's when we have Jenkins coming in place with JMeter. So we have JMeter, Jenkins, and Selenium Grid working all hand in hand to enable us to actually find or diagnose load-related issues. So for that, you would need something called a performance plugin on Jenkins. First of all, I would like to know how many of you use JMeter part of your continuous integration. That's good. Okay, cool. And so there's more of you who can actually give it a try and go out there and actually use it. So we have something called, there's something called the performance plugin, and you can actually enable the report in your JMeter. So you can have it in the user properties. I've already given the property. You can use that property in your user properties file, and that will enable you to see how the performance trend works. So moving forward, I'm going to show you how we can work with this, and I'm just going to give you a demonstration. Yes, so this is my JMeter, Jenkins. And you can see in the Manage Plugins, I am just going to show you how to add a performance plugin for those who've not used Jenkins. So as you can see, we've already got it installed. So it's a performance plugin for JMeter reports, as you can see. And so basically, you just go into available plugins and install this. But when you're talking about continuous integration and completely automated, you have to have all these in your pipeline, all written, either you use Ansible or whatever. So once that is done, you have to go into your bin folder in your JMeter installation, go into your user properties file, and make sure you add this property if you are intending to see the performance trend. So that particular property enables you to keep seeing the performance trend with the help of the Jenkins performance plugin. Now I'm going to go into Jenkins. I'm just going to create a normal freestyle project. So I'm just giving you the basics that you can use in your industry. So you can actually get the source code from Git or anywhere. I'm just having it in the local, and I'm going to add a build script. So that's going to be this particular script. So I'm going to open the bin folder where my jmeter.sh is, and I'm using a shell script because I'm using a Mac machine. And yes, that's my test plan. My test, and that's the report that I'm saving for me to get the performance trend. Once that is done, I am going to go and add the publish performance report. And I'm selecting JMeter for my performance report. And I have all the details. So you can actually give the system, this is the threshold I want. If it fails, then it has to fail the build and so on. You can actually squeeze it out. I have not troubled the system much, but you can actually play around with it. As you can see, I've saved it. And one more thing I'm going to do is, as I said, we can compare the UI and the normal HTTP request or the normal calls. So now I'm going to add also an HTTP request for me to understand the differences between the request, a normal request, the HTTP request time, and the browser opening and going to the particular page time. But this obviously is going to be longer. But if it takes really longer time, that's why we have performance trend. So if it gets more longer, then you can actually worry about it and see what exactly happened. So now I'm running the test, as you can see. It's opening 10 browsers. At the same time, in the background, it's running the 10 HTTP requests as well. So this is not through Jenkins. I'm just showing you that particular call will run my test from my local. And next, I'll be showing you how it runs on Jenkins. So the test is run. You can see that 20 requests have gone. That is 10 Selenium calls and 10 HTTP requests. So now I'm going to save my Jenkins project, and I am going to build it. So as you can see, again, I've gone into my node machine. It's the same old story. It's running the tests. Multiple browsers are opening. And yes, the test is over, so you can see the summary report has appeared as well. And you can also go and see the performance report for that particular build. You have all the details. As you can see, just the normal HTTP call as well as the WebDriver related test, the time taken and all those graphs are there. You can compare, contrast. If it's extremely huge, then you have to worry about it. Else, yeah, it's good, it's performing fine. So now I'm going to put you through the same pain by running the same test, and just for you guys to see how the performance trend works. So as you can see, the last report is saved. You can see that there is a response time and also multiple graphs that have been created, and you can understand the differences as well. So, sorry. So that's basically how it works with your performance trend. You can have the previous report, you can have the old reports, and so on. And that's how it's going to help you with how it works with Selenium Grid. You can have just JMeter, you can have Selenium Grid with JMeter, according to your need, and have it part of your continuous integration. To have a system that handles amount of load is quite helpful for you to probably understand how your system works and also diagnose little performance glitches in an early stage rather than waiting for right at the end. So next I'm going to talk to you about, we've already spoken about performance trend, having a nice performance reports by Jenkins performance plugin, but JMeter already provides their own report. I mean, most of you who've used JMeter might have used this by, I don't know, previous versions. You had to insert more scripts or more property values actually into JMeter user properties file. But now with JMeter 3, it's already embedded, or it's already part of your installation, just that you can play with the threshold value, the time taken. You can actually force the system to fail, or force the test to fail according to your need. If you have a particular benchmark, then you can stick to that, give the knowledge to the user properties file. So that can be found in the JMeter page, as I've shown in the slide. You can go to that particular web page, and there's a lot of information that you can gather and then use with your reports and play around. It's going to give you an HTML report with a lot of detail about like overtime taken, throughput, so on and so forth. And this is going to help you with that. So it's not exactly like the performance trend, it's more sophisticated. So if you can actually use the performance plugin that Jenkins gives you, or you can just stick to this. The choice is yours. Again, it depends on the project need. That's what I believe. And yeah, so next, let's just have a quick demonstration or see how it works, how the APDEX reports of JMeter works for our JMeter and Selenium Grid tests as well. Okay, so I am back into my Jenkins, and I'm showing you how the performance trend report looks like for a previous project. So that's the only details that we get. So now what I'm going to do is have a new particular execute shell or new command, and this will enable me to get the performance report. So you can say I'm saving it, getting the log file with the build ID and getting also the report folder with the build ID. The reason I'm having the build ID, which is a Jenkins variable, for those who've used Jenkins, I'm sure you're aware of it, is because I want to have different, I want to save history. So once that is done, I'm going to take that particular report and I'm going to add in something called an HTML plugin. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it. There is something called HTML Publisher plugin on Jenkins. You can actually add that plugin and have your HTML report seen on that. So that is basically how you would give where the HTML directory is and the index.html. This is definitely going to be part of your pipeline project. You probably will be writing your Groovy scripts. I'm just showing it to you how manually it is done so that you can actually go there and play around with this. So now I'm going to run the test. It's the same test. It's just that the report now would be, we would have an additional report as well. So the one thing about JMeter's browsers is it won't go flick, flick, flick on you. It would be completely on there. You will have to go and click on it if you are actually seeing it. So now the test is done, and you would be now getting the report saved. So I'm going to quickly go into Jenkins. And yes, so it saved my report with the particular build ID, and it's put it into the HTML report plugin. So now there's something called the HTML report, as you can see. So this is how the APDEX report looks like. Since everything passed, it's a green pie chart. But if I had forced something to fail, you would see something red. So you can see overtime, response time, overtime, and so on, throughput, more graphs. So one graph is for the HTTP request, and one graph is for the Selenium test. So one is for just the API call or the HTTP request, whereas the other is for the browser to open and view the particular page. You can have other details as well, as you can see. There's more graphs, it's more sophisticated, you have more detail than actually the performance trends. So I'm just showing to you how I save history. It depends. If you really worry about history, then you can have build ID or something that you like, but it's again left to you. So that's basically it with having to use APDEX reports with Jenkins and JMeter and have it part of your continuous integration, and how Selenium Grid is coming in handy for you to actually see a more realistic perspective of load. Because if it's a shopping site or some site that involves a lot of visual or UI level, then you will have performance glitches and a lot of problems. And that wouldn't be actually part of your API or your HTTP request, and you wouldn't, performance goes completely fine when it comes to the normal HTTP requests or the API calls, but when you're using the system, the page isn't loading, and we all complain for the internet, but sometimes it's not the internet, it is the site. And when we are dealing with multiple clients who might feel frustrated using it, we can actually go forward and maybe do a bit of visual load testing with the help of JMeter, compare and contrast and diagnose issues and find solutions. So I hope you guys got an idea of how to work with load test, and I'm sure you guys can go out there and be ready for performance testing. Definitely not in the Spartan style, but in your own style. So thank you so much for being present here, and you've been a wonderful audience. And if there's any questions, feel free to contact me. And for now, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you. I was curious, have you devised a means of telling whether the application is loading or the grid hub is loading? As you know, it has a threshold
Yes.
delay as well.
Yeah, that's true. So when you are actually trying to understand how the time taken for the particular page to load, you should also consider the time of the ramp-up time also. So if you see like about 9,000 milliseconds, you don't go, whoa, because there's a ramp-up time that I've given of 5 seconds. So you should make sure that is there, because the reason we are giving a ramp-up time is if you give 0, then you're just going to have all the browsers open and it's just going to go haywire. So that's the reason we've got a ramp-up time. But whenever you're doing the diagnosis or considering the time that is taken with the UI test, make sure you always keep in mind that you've given a ramp-up time, and that should be subtracted. Yes.
Hi. So I have a fairly big investment in protractor Jasmine tests, and I noticed that you kind of had to rewrite your tests within JMeter. Is there a way to import external tests and have the JMeter tool?
The thing is, the tests that are written in the WebDriver sampler is not the same test that I would write with my Selenium projects. So it's a bit, the syntax is a bit different, so that's the only problem. But other than for that, the logic and everything is the same. So that's one glitch that you probably will have to work extra. If you have the test already written in your Java project or C# or something, then you will definitely have to change it. Currently, they haven't got it enabled in any other language other than for,
Okay. There is a tool called Taras, which will integrate anybody you can consume all your scripts, and you can run that into
okay, there you go. Thank you.
So I have a question regarding your thread groups and the size you typically use and recommend. Like, how big is your Selenium grid to support the load that you?
Okay, so the thing is, most of the configuration is done by our DevOps guys. But for me, what we've done is we've tried to divide it between multiple browsers and multiple machines. The reason is, as I've mentioned before, because the system is, it's not realistic for the load to come out of one browser or one particular machine. So we have it divided into multiple machines. Sometimes it depends on how many users that you're looking for. Sometimes if your machine can handle about 100 users, most of the time, but you will obviously use a high CPU level, and it's obviously going to be the memory level and everything's going to be high. So yeah, you need to think wisely, and according to your need, you will have to use it. Yes.
So I have a question right at the back.
Okay.
So have you used any source control to keep track of this JMeter scripts to be used on Jenkins, or how do you
Yeah, you can actually commit it like source control, as in you're saying like something like GitHub or Stash. Yeah, we use Stash, so we have it committed on and off on Stash itself. And so that, because I don't know if you guys have experienced, sometimes JMeter tends to crash all of a sudden, and then you have to find the XML and then patch it up. So yeah, we commit it to Stash, and from there you can pull it and use it for your continuous integration. You don't have to, I just showed a basic idea, but we don't pull the JMeter script out of the local machine.
Thanks.
Yes. I can see you have quite a few metrics to measure. Is there a way you can set a threshold so it can pick up, make a logical decision to move to the downstream job?
Yes, you can. So if you're using the APDEX report, just have a look at the JMeter page about the report. You can actually set up a particular threshold level according to your need and according to like a special timing that you want that system to take to get to see that particular element. If it takes a longer time, then it just fails that, even though it ends up loading that page, still it has passed that particular time that you've given, it would just fail. Same with the performance plugin. If you give, initially I had tried to like give extra time, like threshold time, and it would actually fail. So you can say error threshold and stuff like that in your performance plugin in Jenkins. So in that way you can limit and squeeze your system.
I have a question. You suggested that JMeter should be, the performance testing should be part of the CI. How are you making sure that the changes are not breaking the JMeter scripts?
Okay, so that's the thing. So when the obviously when it's like how we use with automation, I'm sorry, I don't know where you are. Okay, so when you use, continuous integration, it's same as automation because it's Selenium. So when there's a new particular button or something put on a particular page, we obviously have that particular test written for just the functional automation. In the same way, you will have to update your JMeter scripts and commit it to stash, or for us, but it depends on your source control, and keep that part of it, because obviously that is very important for you to run the continuous integration. So that's how you will have to keep the thing going, because otherwise, you're going to, obviously it's going to fail. Yeah, okay.
Hey. Just a quick question on load and performance outside and around the world for consumers.
Yes.
So in a previous role, we had around about 6 billion page impressions every month. And a consideration was network and, how we interacted with the end user, whether they're mobile, web, their bandwidth and all of that. How do you handle that internally on the Selenium Grid to get metrics to say, well, actually, not everyone's on the best network, massive pipelines going through? How can you throttle the grid and actually use those metrics to create a better website?
Okay, so like JMeter basically doesn't have that by itself, but there are paid tools like BlazeMeter that actually enables, because you have clients from multiple, people from various parts of the world, and BlazeMeter actually enables you. I don't know if you are already using it. So when you use BlazeMeter, you can have this, because end of the day, this is your .jmx, and that's what you are uploading into BlazeMeter. And that would obviously have the different networks or the different areas, and you can find the timing and stuff like that. Does that answer your question? Yeah, thank you.
This isn't a question, it's just to let people know, in previous testing I found that a single Selenium Grid node, a hub, can handle about 200 node machines running 10 to 15 browsers max before it starts to go sideways. And upwards of, you could do about 400 nodes if you only run one browser session per node, if you wanted to do like more of a distributed test for those who are interested. That's all.
Hi. How is your strategy for getting mass data to drive these tests? Because a lot of times it's not having individual machines, but having images uploaded that are unique so that you're not testing the cache, or rather getting past the UI. What would be your strategy for getting data?
Yeah, so talking about cache, the best part about how JMeter opens its WebDriver is when it opens multiple browsers, if you go for a login page in one browser, it wouldn't have the login done on the other. It's completely detached, so there's no caching, no cookies, nothing. So it works that way, and that's why it's helpful for loading. Otherwise, we will, obviously, when you're having to do load testing for a simple login, it wouldn't work. And that's how JMeter works. Is there anything else that I can?
Strategies for like creating unique data. Like you can't log in with John Smith 10,000 times.
Yeah, that's right.
It'll end up going to a cache layer, right? Or if you're doing a Google search, you've got to have a unique Google search for everyone, right? And so a lot of times I've found with Ancestry, trying to get mass data to load a system up is the bottleneck.
So you can actually, so if you want to log in with multiple different users, usernames, then there's something like, I don't know if you've used CSV data config and other types where you can even write scripts in JMeter for it to pull out. So that will help you, so you can have a list of the users and the password and so on and use that. So that's the only way so far I've used. Maybe there's other ways as well.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you.